I'm Amanda Knox, and you're listening to Hard Knocks. Welcome, Brooke, to Hard Knocks. I'm really, really excited to talk to you. Obviously, we're inspired by your new book, Wink, Wink, Nudge, Nudge, which is all about exposing the realities of the sugar babying industry. And I don't know. I mean, this is something that I'm personally really quite curious about, because I think like any young woman who is attractive and also has bills to pay, the thought has gone through my mind, as I think it's gone through many young women's minds, mostly because the idea wasn't actually something that I thought of. It was more someone approached me, a male person approached me and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about selling your body for sex?" Basically is how it comes out. And it's always like this, or I don't know, maybe it's not always, but the way that I was first approached by someone was back when there were video stores. So to age myself, I went to a video store and the person behind the counter at the video store was like, "Hey, have you ever considered doing softcore porn?" And I was like, "No, I have not." And they were like, "Well, it's really good money. It's like, all you have to do is take a shower and you walk away with $2,000. And as someone who was in college and had, 2 different jobs, that sounded really nice for a split second. And obviously, I'm glad to this day that I didn't go through with that sort of invitation. But I think that invitation is sort of eerily out there. And so, yeah, let's just talk about it as someone who's been there, not necessarily done a softcore, shower scene, but been in certain kinds of relationships. I kind of just want to get right to the meat of it, which is that you are arguing in Wink, Wink, Nudge, Nudge that this idea of a mutually beneficial, financially based, romantic sexual relationship between a wealthy older man and a poor younger woman is fundamentally imbalanced. There's a fundamental power imbalance, that idea of there being something mutually exclusive is a lie. And I wonder if you could sort of dig into that for me.
Absolutely. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And for your own personal anecdote. I think a lot of young women, especially beautiful young women like you, have experiences like that, or it's at least crossed your mind. And yes, the idea of a mutually beneficial relationship is fundamentally flawed. But that's not to say it doesn't happen in the real world. There are these gray areas. And, I'm not saying that every single experience is terrible, but a broken clock is right twice a day. And just because there are certain splinter cases where it works out for people or everyone thinks they're getting exactly what they want, the vast majority of people using these types of websites are manipulated, beguiled, conned, assaulted, and really left with no recourse. Because when you put yourself in a situation where consent is implied, it doesn't really matter if you say no, because the money's in your account, you're in the dress, you're at the party. You don't really have a lot of options. You can run kicking and screaming, and then who do you go to? The police, who a lot of times are going to say, "Well, were you soliciting?" So you implicate yourself. It's kind of like if a drug dealer says they got robbed. The police aren't going to go looking for the cocaine, they're going to be like, "Well, you're a drug dealer, so we're going to prosecute you." So that, I think that is happening, the prosecution of the victims, I think that is happening less these days. But that is the kind of situation you put yourself in. And the situation that I ended up in, and kind of what I detail in my book, is how I got in that situation. And then, the aftermath, which for me was completely forgetting about all of the terrible experiences I had and working for the company. Because at 22, that was just kind of what I thought was the right decision, was to double down on my bad choices. And I live in Las Vegas. I was living in Las Vegas as a 21-year-old. So The idea of a rich guy spending money on me or spoiling me, that was not foreign to me. I had experienced that, going to the club or wherever. So it's just kind of a little bit more common here in Sin City, where it literally is a very sinister city, and people kind of get sucked into this lifestyle. It's very unnerving when you kind of take a step back. And as I've grown older, those girls look younger and younger. And I realize how I was manipulated at a young age. It really starts when you're very young. So I was 14 the first time I was assaulted, and by an older man, and at the time I thought that it was a choice of mine. I thought that I was, going to sleep with an older man. But when you look back in reality, it was statutory rape. So you come to those realizations after the fact, of course. And that's kind of what the book is about.
Yeah, I mean, putting aside, first of all, acknowledging the whole statutory rape of it all. But then even putting that, so acknowledging and also saying, okay, there's clearly an issue if there are minors who are being trafficked on a website to older men who are paying for sex with underage children. That obviously is a crime. But then we enter into that gray space again of you're 18, you're going out with a 50-year-old man, and the premise of that relationship is he's going to be taking care of you. He's going to be spoiling you. And in exchange, you are in a relationship with this person, which involves sex. I'm trying to figure out, I want to pinpoint the reason why this is fundamentally flawed in a way that is different than any other kind of job, which because I think one could argue, if they wanted to play devil's advocate, that isn't there always a power imbalance between employers and employees? Somebody has the money, somebody wants the money. It's supply and demand. We're all trying to enter into mutually beneficial relationships all the time with people with where the exchange of money takes place. What is it about these situations that lead to issues of coercion or scamming or boundaries being violated? Why aren't there regulations within the industry itself that protect both the babies and the daddies? Where is there a pretext of that?
That's a great question, and there's a lot of parts to it, so I will do my best to answer. Well, first of all, no, I like the question. So first of all, it's not the relationships that are the problem, because if two people are to meet at a bar or establishment or wherever and go on to engage in such a relationship, I don't really have any moral quandaries with an older man dating a younger woman. I'm 33. I like older men. I feel like they're more mature and they're actually on my level in a lot of ways. Talking to a 33-year-old man, I don't want to date them. They seem like children. So I don't think, and that's personally me. So I really don't think that it's the relationships that are the problem. It's the website that's the problem. So the issue with the website is that the power imbalance is innate. It is. We already can see, yes, there is a power imbalance there, but that is magnified, facilitated, and emboldened by this website, because when you join the website as a young girl, like I did, I was 21 when I joined the website, I thought that what I would find is a rich boyfriend. And that's what the website tells you'll find, is a rich boyfriend, because I, of course, wanted my rich boyfriend to turn into a rich husband. I'm still looking for him.
Sure.
So that is not what you find on the website. Most of the men are married. Most of the men are not rich. Most of the men don't have any expendable income, and they are using the website as an agency to coerce young girls into sex with the promise of money or whatever, and then usually not delivering. Or it's a predatory way to bait women and figure out who is vulnerable. And I'm not saying that every single time something bad happens, but I like to equate it to driving on the freeway. It's well, if you drive without insurance, maybe you'll get from point A to point B and maybe you'll be just fine. But if something dire happens, you're SOL and you're going to end up, in a lot of debt, in prison, like whatever it is. It's like you risk a lot when you try to when you specifically go on these websites, because like I said, the situations are going to happen organically. Like that's really not the problem. The problem is the product, is the website itself, that the mechanics of it are designed to protect predatory men. And they do that through intentional anonymity. So everyone on the website is encouraged to be anonymous, or that was the case when I was working there and when I first joined the website back in 2013. They encourage anonymity at every corner, but with little notes, winks, nudges, to say, don't use your real identity, don't use pictures that look like you. You can use hidden pictures, and then you only reveal them to some people. There's all sorts of mechanisms and this is just the first one of many mechanisms that are curated to protect predators. So when I joined the website, I thought that the anonymity was to protect me. And I was like, oh, well, I guess I don't want my name associated with this because of stalkers or whatever. But then when I grew to know what is really going on, I realized that the anonymity is to protect predators so that they have no connection to their identity, and their crimes can be easily obfuscated because the website only gives out any kind of personal information with a subpoena. So if you get assaulted or left pregnant or lots of other terrible things that literally happened every day and all the time, and girls would reach out to us. I worked in the PR department, and girls would reach out to us because we were one of the only contacts that they could find. So they would reach out to us with sob stories every single day, really, really sad and terrible stories. And what we would say is, well, you have to go to the police, you have to get a subpoena, we can't give out personal information. And what these companies do, what these corporations and enterprises that are conducting criminal activity, they always lean on their terms, right? It's the terms of you. Well, you agreed to the terms. Well, it's against our terms to give out personal information, and you have to get a subpoena. It's like, okay, well, a girl who was going to accept money for having sex, but of course isn't a professional escort and doesn't see herself as that, because the website tells you that you're not an escort. This isn't a website for prostitution, when indeed that's exactly what is going on. So it's very confusing for a young girl who's like, well, wait, am I doing something illegal? But it says I'm not. Like the website, and then as a very young girl, you think, well, wouldn't the website be shut down if it was a website for prostitution and sex trafficking? Like that's how your mind works, is because you believe the government is there to protect you and the government enforces laws that are there. But as I've grown older, I've learned that the website is there to protect the criminals a lot of times, if they're white collar and they are doing, it under the guise of these terms or these laws or whatever. So it's a really seedy, insidious, in my opinion, diabolical website that convinces young girls that they are not prostitutes, when in fact what you find is men who are wanting to pay you for sex. And I know there's like a great libertarian argument for prostitution. I don't buy it, because I've actually experienced it, and you really can't find a lot of current prostitutes that are or former prostitutes that are advocating for prostitution. It just doesn't work like that. It's kind of like a crackhead advocating for crack to be legal. Like, of course you think should be legal, like you're a crackhead. So the argument is fundamentally flawed. And if you want me to get into that, I will. But
yeah, let's do eventually. I want to like dig in a little bit more to some of the things that you're talking about. Because yes, so great. We've identified the issue, which is a predatory website, which is lying to its clients. And, one thing I'm noticing here is you said that, every single day girls are calling in talking about how they've been scammed or conned or victimized in some way as a result of participating in a relationship through this website. Were you seeing any of the daddies calling in to complain, or was it very typically the babies who were the ones who came out feeling like they had been exploited or conned or scammed?
It did happen on both ends, but when I was working for the company, there were about 10 sugar babies to every sugar daddy. And when you think of predators, you know that predators can hit a lot of women. So one predator might hit 100, 200 women. So it was really more normal for the sugar babies to be the ones that were conned and manipulated or assaulted or whatever. And that's also because they're young and they're naive and they don't have the wisdom of age, of course, but also because the website sets young girls up for actual like fraud, like financial fraud, because a lot of these girls are too young to remember the Nigerian prince scam or check fraud scams. Some of them have never even received a check in their life. So when they fall into a check fraud scam in which a rich sugar daddy is going to send them a check for $2,000 and then all they have to do is send him back $500, they fall for it because they don't know. And because of the culture of secrecy and discretion that honestly breeds evil, in my opinion, they don't tell anyone about it. They get scammed and then they don't tell anyone. So if they do have anyone to tell, usually it's the website, it's the website itself, the company. And of course the company doesn't do anything. They actually used to, when I was first working for the company, it was my understanding that they kicked bad actors off of the website. But then I learned later on during my tenure that they actually didn't kick bad actors off the website. They just tracked them and made sure that because if they did kick them off, they could just make another profile because it's an anonymous website. So there was really no point to kick people off, but the same goes for underage users, right? It's like, well, if you get kicked off for being underage, you just make another profile and lie better. So sorry, back to your question, which is, does it ever happen to the men? Yeah, certainly. There are like rinsers, I would say, who say they're going to sleep with you and then they don't, and they take your money or they steal from you or whatever. And it's like, yeesh, certainly that could happen. But that really only happens, to guys who are kind of willing to let that happen to them, like most of them are going to have the sex first before they give the money or whatever. Or, if they get robbed, yeah, sure, that all could happen. And that did happen sometimes. But in my opinion, those instances are more few and far between than the more common scam, which is these men who have no intention of actually being a true sugar daddy, but use the website to get easy sex under the guise of taking a girl on a trip or paying a girl's money, tuition or whatever. And then they actually don't deliver on that, but they do have the sex and then they never call her again. Which, to say that doesn't happen in the real world, like, okay, yes, like some men are dogs, like not all men are like that, whatever. But the problem is the website, right? Because the website tees up the ball for predators, because a young girl is expecting to meet a wealthy benefactor, is expecting to meet a sugar daddy, because that's what the marketing of the company and the lies that they tell is what they'll find. But what they actually find is predators trying to pay for sex, if they pay at all. And it's interesting because the website has completely shed its skin year after year to obfuscate justice, in my opinion, because there is litigation against this that was passed in 2018 while I was working for the company. Because before that, it was kind of a legal gray area. But now it's absolutely insane because the website touts itself as a place for hypergamy, which is when a woman marries someone of a higher socioeconomic status. And
Okay.
it's very interesting because most of the men are married already and cheating on their wives. So it begs the question, like, how are you going to get married when you're already married, sir? So yeah, it's a very, very seedy website. And yeah, we can get into like the legal stuff and the other arguments. Yeah.
I'm curious to know how, and I'm sure you've gone down this rabbit hole, how these websites compared to regular dating websites. Like, how do, the other dating websites that are out there protect their users from scams or con artists or, people who, assault, like, criminal violence against other people. And I'm including in those lists of like regular or traditional websites, like kink websites, which do involve often a level of anonymity to allow people to share and to communicate with others their like private, intimate, but like maybe not public desires or kinky needs to each other, and to help facilitate the finding of each other. What is it about these websites that is different or similar to those websites? Are those websites also problematic? Like, I'm curious what your opinion is on that.
Well, it's an insightful question. The question at the top was, how do dating websites protect their members? And the short answer is they don't. That's why you hear all of these crazy scams and stories, and a lot of people have very bad experiences online dating because, the short of it is some dating apps, they allow you to like verify your pictures and stuff like that. So at least like, I guess your face looks like your picture or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, if someone's going to con you into a romance scam or whatever, like they're going to do that, and they're going to be able to do that using these apps or websites or whatever. I think they've gotten a little bit more advanced because they do want to like keep members on. They want members to pay. So they have gotten a little bit better in terms of that. But if two members who are who they say they are, if one of them like robs one or assaults one or whatever, that's no longer the website's problem. And that is the legal tense of it. And it's because, well, I mean, maybe that's not the legal phrasing of it, but that is how it goes down. And that's how it's playing out in the courts as we speak, because there's this legislation called Section 230, which is part of the Communications Decency Act of 1996. And some of you might have be familiar with this, or maybe you've heard of it, because it's like a little piece of legislation. It's 26 words that basically govern the entire internet. And it states that websites are not criminally responsible for the content that third-party users post. So in effect, they are treated as the distributor of that content and not the publisher of that content. And it goes back to books, and when books were this and that. So anyway, there's a really interesting book called The 26 Words That Created the Internet that I would encourage anyone to read if they want to kind of learn how that legislation was shaped. And it's incremental, right? And then it turns into this weird law that sort of protects all of these websites. And it was written during a time when we didn't know that the internet would be like 90% user-generated content. So it sort of protects websites, and for better or worse, right? I think that's a good thing. Like, obviously, Twitter doesn't want to be held responsible for the crazy whatever's on, that's good in my opinion. But then it also ends up protecting dating websites from any kind of criminal responsibility when it comes to the safety of their members, because they are simply the distributor of the content. So they don't have any sort of legal liability. But that actually changed. So back when I started working for the company in 2013, that was the theory of the day, was that, well, we don't have any criminal responsibility in terms of like what happens to the members, which was true. But in 2018, there was new legislation passed, like sort of an amendment to Section 230. It was a bill called FOSTA SESTA, and it's the Allow Victims to Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act. And it's, in effect, it shut down Backpage. Do you remember Backpage at all?
I remember hearing about it. I've never been on Backpage.
Okay, well,
but
good.
Yeah.
Good. So it was like a very overt, like classifieds website for prostitution. It was like $300 an hour. Like, it was.
Got it.
And it also, they weren't reporting their underage users at all. They were kind of like, oh, well, these underage users, like, they make money. So, it's like, because unfortunately, as a prostitute or as a sex worker, like a porn actress or something like that, you do make the most money as an 18-year-old or as an under 18-year-old, because that's a fetish and it's disgusting and it's unfortunately the way it is. But back in 2018, there was this new bill that went through Congress and passed. And it basically states that any website that facilitates, assists, or supports prostitution or sex trafficking is no longer covered by Section 230. They are criminally responsible for this goings on. So when I was working there, that legislation passed, and I was like, oh, like, we're going down, like we're doing everything that Backpage is doing, because we are facilitating and knowingly allowing and winking and nudging people into kosher behavior on the website. But that was through a series of mechanisms that kind of taught members. We called it like coaching members. You would coach members on how to behave on the website, right? Because once they get off the website, then they're someone else's problem. But if they're behaving that way on the website, then that's a problem. And it's sort of like this wink and nod that says, hey, listen, like, we know you want to pay underage girls for sex, but just, can you do it off the website? Like, can you get another app? Like, can you get a texting? Like, can you use something else? you can't do that here. And they would kind of slap the men on the wrist and say, hey, like, don't do that. But then, of course, allow them to remain on the website. But for the women who were engaged in any sort of like solicitation or any exchange, they would completely like ban them and suspend them and like kick them off the website. So there were lots of little things like that in which the members were treated differently because the men paid for membership and the women did not. Well, the sugar babies. So, I mean, men could be sugar babies.
Right. The babies were free, the daddies had to pay, and therefore there was a preference to allow daddies to do certain behaviors because they were paying.
Exactly. So it's like if you look at it as a scale, right? It's like, okay, the imbalance of power is already like this. But then when you look at how the website is run and the mechanisms and the lies, it's like, okay, this is a racket. Like it's not just a little imbalance of power. It's not just a little shady. Like it's actually criminal.
I guess that's how it's also different in model from a dating website where presumably everyone has to pay to be a part of the dating website. Therefore, everyone is considered a fully valued customer and would get booted off if they violated the terms and conditions.
That's a very good point. But I would say the main difference is that they imply money. Like, you can't do that. You can't tell a young girl that she's going to get paid and get money if she joins this website. Like, that is fraud, in my opinion, because it's not true.
Yeah, I mean, here's a fun little experiment just for ourselves. Say we weren't evil, con artist people who were basically just trying to facilitate prostitution online and we're trying to get away with it. Say we actually wanted to create a dating website for what was this term? People who desire
hypergamy.
Yeah, hypergamy, sure. And, it doesn't really matter if it's hetero relationships, whatever. It's just any kind of relationship. But there is the fetish is, or the specific interest is, people of different economic statuses finding each other and finding love. Is that humanly possible? Or is the very fact that relationship, the part of the attraction is the financial exchange, is it you mentioned that you like older men and you like wealthy older men. That happens to be a thing that is attractive. Of course it's attractive. How, is there a way to facilitate that, or is it fundamentally flawed and we should just go back to the days of going out to bars and meeting people in bars? Is it humanly possible?
It is humanly possible, but you don't need a specific dating website, in my opinion, to facilitate that. I think that those types of people have been finding themselves for decades. So it's
Okay.
it's not an uncommon thing, and it's not something that doesn't occur naturally. The problem, in my opinion, is preying on people's insecurities and their desire for money and attention.
Okay.
It's Yes, certainly there are websites like that. There are other websites that tout themselves as more like established men or whatever. It's like, yeah, but when you kind of think about it, does an established, quote, high value man, does he need a website to find girls? Does a wealthy older man really need a specific website that says, I'm a wealthy older man? That's just not really true. He'll have good luck on Bumble or whatever because it's just not really necessary. Or he'll probably have good luck out in the real world because supply and demand and, rich, quote, high value men do have kind of their pick of whoever they want. So I don't really think a high value man needs a specific website to tell people that. Usually the ones that are the most high value are not touting that because they don't want people to use them for their money. So it just kind of, it begs the question, why do you have to flaunt your money? Do you really have money? Or are you trying to prey on people? Are you not humble at all. Like, I don't know. Like, certainly there are websites like that. And I'm not saying that like every single case is a bad one. But back when I was working for this company, we had billboards that said, "Happy 18th birthday, meet your new daddy." And we had, press pushes about getting your college tuition paid by a wealthy benefactor. That rarely ever happened. So that to me is a lot different than saying, do you want to marry someone of a higher socioeconomic status? The main thing on these sugar daddy websites is they're not about marriage. They're not about long-term commitment. Like that's I think the differing factor is when you tie in money and short-term not commitment, the line goes further and further towards prostitution. And whether it's the girlfriend experience, right, whether she like pretends to really like you and stays overnight or doesn't, like it's still prostitution. So I think, and I call it soft prostitution because a lot of times it's a bit more unspoken than you think. It's not like, "Hey, I will have sex for you for $500. It's more like, "Hey, here's $1,000. What are you willing to do for it?" And that's kind of what happened to me is that I didn't know if I was going to do something or not, but then the money was in my purse and I was just like, well, I guess do I like the money? Do I want to keep the money? Is he going to take the money back if I don't do something? So I think that idea that there is no like verbal transaction, and also the idea that you have your own agency and you're setting up your own dates, and also the idea that like if this website was really illegal and if I was really a prostitute and this was really a website for prostitution, then wouldn't it be shut down? Wouldn't it be illegal? Like all of these things are kind of like mess with these young girls' heads, and when you're so young, you don't have a lot of experience. So I mean, certainly, can women marry up? Is that something they want to seek out? Like, yeah, of course, but that's not what's going on here.
One of those things when it comes down to this question of like choice and coercion, like I know from the kink community that they're really, really strict and even self-policing as a community about communicating boundaries. Like boundaries are like 100% vocalized, even written and agreed upon, so that there is no confusion within that space, so that it can facilitate the kind of experiences that everyone wants and can consent to. And it sounds to me like what is being communicated to advertised to potential clients is what you're arguing, which is a scam, which is itself fraud, which is to say, oh, you're going to enter into these kinds of relationships and there are going to be boundaries and you are going to have choice. But when it really comes down to it, no boundaries or choices are communicated. And instead, it's relying upon a kind of implicit feeling of, what do I owe this person now that we are in this exchange? Is that fundamentally what is at the heart of the issue here?
The kink community, they're very like overt on their boundaries, and like that's like part of it. They're self-policing. Consent is like something very big and important, and that's not happening in most of these sugar relationships. I mean, yes and no. It's hard to paint with a broad brush and say every single time there's no consent. Like, no, I would say there certainly is consent. And I would say there are, quote, successful people who join the website and they don't have any qualms or issues. But that doesn't negate the problem at hand, which is that the website is predatory and it enables predatory people. And like I said at the top, a broken clock is right twice a day. Just because sometimes there are people who have consensual relationships and everything is well and good, doesn't mean that this website should tee up the ball for predators who are looking for vulnerable, destitute, underage girls. Like, it's just, to me, like, it doesn't add up. So, like I said, there are situations where consent is implied and you don't have a lot of legal recourse if you are a prostitute and you do get assaulted because you were committing a crime as well. And I think that sort of mentality and that system is what keeps the victims from coming forward a lot of times. And so the men can get away with it again and again. And then you've got the anonymity. So it's just like the chips are stacked so far against the young girls or young men who participate, and they think they're going to like find some rich benefactor. The chips are just really stacked against them. And it's not just moral. It's not just like in practice. It's like the product. It's the website itself that is stacking those chips against them.
Okay, so let's talk about how you were lured in by the website. Like, what is the typical person who is being advertised to by this website to be a sugar baby? And what is the typical user who falls for it?
Again, it's hard to paint with a broad brush because there are so many different types of people who come to this website. The majority of them are financially vulnerable. They do not have money. They need money. And that's why they come to the website, is because they don't have enough money to even pay for their basic needs. So I think that is kind of a common through line, but I wouldn't say that that's every single person. So again, I'm gonna kind of paint a picture of most people, but it's not going to be all of them. So, you know, the cherry pickers out there are going to be like, well, that's not how my experience. I was like, okay, certainly. But the majority of people are destitute. A lot of them are in college. Most of them are very young. The website says you have to be 18 to join, but when I was working there were a lot of underage users on the site. The majority of sugar baby profiles were Black women. So again, a marginalized community that is affected at a greater rate by poverty and lack of resources and all of this. So it also led to a really shocking amount of racism on the website, because there are so many Black women. So they have to, I guess, like try a little bit harder to attract men, because there's more options for Black women, I suppose. And so then the men are turned off by that, and they are overtly racist to these young women. And then I think they also are impacted by other bad actors at a higher rate, just because there are more of them. So that's a thing. I mean, there are like gay sugar baby men who are on the website. That was like about, I think, 10% of the sugar baby users. So yeah, I mean, the common through line is these people are lied to about what they're going to find on the website, and they do not want to be prostitutes, or else they would just go be a prostitute, right? And they don't believe they're prostitutes, but they might be willing to be paid for sex. And they're naive to the idea that could be true, and that you could really not be a prostitute and yet be willing to be paid for sex and not get into the same dangerous situations that prostitutes get into, just because the website is around and because they say they're not that. So, you know, it's the same strategy used by politicians. The website just says, oh, no, we're not that. Wink, wink, you know, like, and then that's exactly what's happening. So
can we dig into a little bit of the psychology there of the person who, you know, let's say they're not destitute, because I think, again, when we're talking about like absolute desperation, just trying to get food on the table, a place to, you know, sleep at night, clearly there is coercion, and you're willing to do anything in order, you know, you're willing to steal food, like you're willing to do anything to survive. Okay, let's advance above that and go to a person who's getting by, but they have some choices, right? Like they can either work multiple minimum wage jobs and barely scrape by, or they are attracted to a glamorous lifestyle where, you know, they're taken care of, they get nice things, and they're in a relationship. Like, I'm curious, like, you know, because again, like I can really see myself there. Like there was a certain point in my life when I was, you know, 18 to 20, and I'm in school and I'm working multiple jobs. And that's even when I had, you know, some financial support from my own family, where like, it's just like life is hard, and wouldn't it be nicer if it was just a little bit easier? And the lies that we tell ourselves to put ourselves in a position of vulnerability, and how just risky behavior results from financial incentives?
That's exactly the position I was in. I actually had been kind of conned out of some money by a guy not on the website. So I was really in dire straits. I had literally like no money in my checking account at all. And then that's when I sort of toyed with the idea. But originally I joined the website because they were doing a reality show casting. So I thought that I was going to be a reality show star at 21. I was like, oh, great, I'll be the next Kim K. And so I signed up for the website with the specific intent of doing the reality show casting. And so I emailed them and I was like, hey, I really want to do this. I don't have any experience on the site. Like I've never been on any dates, this and that, but like, I want to be on the reality show. And they're like, oh, it's okay. We'll just tell you what to say. It's more of like an acting gig. So you'll just go on camera and we'll just tell you what to say and yada, yada. So that's what I did is I did this reality show. It was not a reality show at all. It was like this one-off show, about Las Vegas, for I guess the Travel Channel, but my interview never aired because it was absolutely terrible. And it was from there that they actually recruited me to be a PR rep for the website, because they knew that I had the look they wanted. I was my moral compass was a bit eroded, and I was willing to lie on camera, which are all like really great things for a young girl. And no, I wasn't destitute, right? I had, I was never homeless. I never couldn't eat, right? Because my parents were able to like help me out somewhat. So that wasn't the case for me. But in terms of the way that I felt and the way that like social media was kind of coming up at the time and comparing my life to other people's lives and thinking like, wow, like I literally live down the street from the Wynn, but I can't even afford like a cup of coffee there. Like that's a really weird dichotomy to be in, especially as like a very young girl who is cute enough to get attention from men. It's like you think, well, like would it be so bad if I kind of monetized that? So yeah, I mean, you do have choices, but I think that becomes less and less the deeper you get into it, because you end up with a lifestyle that you can't really afford otherwise. It's like a lot of prostitutes want to get out of it, but they can't afford to because they don't have any job skills. They don't like have any other like means of getting money. But also the website is ripe with traffickers, also known as pimps, who use the website to lure young girls into lives of sex trafficking. And a lot of people kind of think that sex trafficking is just, immigrant children being disappeared and all of this. It's like, yes, that is absolutely terrible. And that absolutely does happen. But there is also sex trafficking happening down the road, from people who the girls usually know their trafficker, or they somewhat trust him. They kind of get involved with him. So, and also you kind of have to remember, like, trafficked people are they're not kicking and screaming, they are a lot of times willing participants at first, which is kind of what we saw play out in the Diddy case with Cassie. It's like, okay, like there were instances when she was kind of a willing participant. And so therefore, he wasn't convicted, because there wasn't proof that it was all forced and coercion and whatever. And I mean, that's a lot of other details I can talk about another time. But I think that's what you kind of have to realize is you get in these situations where it's like, do you really have a choice? Sure, you have a choice, but also like a lot of times there's threats involved. They might have videos of you. There's blackmail involved. The young girls are a commodity. Like they are the honeypot. They are how, you get the high profile people to do things with young girls on camera. And it's my belief that the website was used by the likes of Diddy's procurement, by Epstein's procurement, because you don't really need celebrity and enterprise anymore to attract these young girls. Like you have the internet and you have the guys of these websites where this is allowed. And, take the instance of Matt Gaetz, who has come out in the House ethics report against him that, he was having sex with an underage girl, that there was this procurement pimp guy who was using seeking arrangement to procure underage girls for him. And it's all in this report, detailing it, in very, shocking terms what happened, and that, this website Seeking Arrangement was used to facilitate underage sex trafficking. And yet the website is still around. Now you're asking the right questions, Amanda, like what the F is going on here? Because there's a lot of nonprofits and everything like that that I work with trying to inform people and trying to bring this to the DOJ. There's actually one of those, so the National Center on Sexual Exploitation has one of those like websites that like lists all of what's going on. It's called a Dirty Dozen of like different websites that facilitate sex trafficking, and Seeking is on there. And it says, write your congressman or write the DOJ and tell them to investigate Seeking this and that. So it's like there is a lot of information out there, and there are a lot of people trying to do this work, and yet it just seems like the website is allowed to exist, not even in the shadows anymore, because there is literally a federal document from the House of Representatives that explicitly states exactly what's going on. So if you don't take my word for it, if you think I'm a compromised person, whatever, go read that report. It is delicious. It is juicy. And it is from our elected representatives that are telling us that this website, specifically by name, many, many times in the document, is telling you exactly what's going on. And yet, where are we at? But also, furthermore, back when that Matt Gaetz scandal broke in 2021, I wasn't working for the company anymore, but I was reached out to by the New York Times and by ABC 2020, who both wanted to do stories about this. They said, is there something seedy going on here? And I was like, yeah, and I'm really surprised that the website hasn't been shut down, because at that point it had been a few years since FOSTA was passed. And I was like, oh, this is a sinking ship. Like this thing is going down. So, but I wasn't working for the company anymore, and I was ready to talk. I did sign an NDA, but I was like, this company is committing criminal activity. So my NDA is not valid for a criminal enterprise. You can't have legal documents for a criminal enterprise. Like that's not how it works. So I was like, you know what? I'll talk. And I did. I talked to the New York Times for hours and hours. ABC 2020 flew me out to New York, had a day of production buzzing around me. And these journalists really told me that they were going to do right, and that they were going to get this story out there. And they told me they believed in what I was saying, and they believed in justice and good. And those stories never came out, and those journalists don't talk to me anymore. And that was
really?
Yeah, over 4 years ago.
Why?
Your guess is as good as mine. So I don't know. I don't know why these stories never came out. And that's back then is when I decided to start writing the book, because I was like, shoot, like there's a New York Times article coming out. Like I better kind of get ahead of this and like hopefully like get a book deal or something like that. Because I think the story is so much more complicated than probably what's going to come out in the Times. And I think my specific story of being a former sugar baby who was a user of the website, who also worked for the company, who learned all of these things both firsthand and back behind the scenes, like I just like, okay, I was like, I have to tell my story. So that's when I started writing. And
is it an issue of like a legal loophole? Is it an issue of there not being enough physical evidence? Like what's lacking here?
If I had to guess, and this is pure speculation, I would guess that there are people in high positions of power who like the way it is, who like that there is a website where congressmen and important people can get procurement people and pimps to discreetly find underage girls and pay them for sex. I think they like the way it is. And I don't think they want the website shut down, because I think a lot of the people in charge are pedophiles. So, I mean, if that sounds conspiratorial, then so be it. Like, I really did not start out at a conspiratorial place. Back when I was talking to the New York Times in 2021, I was very for legacy media. And I was like, oh, the New York effing Times, like, they're going to do good. Like, they have my back. But what I learned is that they don't have my back, and they don't have the backs of their users or their subscribers. You know, they're not out to do good. They're out to benefit people in power. And then that just is proven to me personally by my own experiences time and time again. So if you want to call me a conspiracy theorist or whatever, so be it. But I'm speaking on my own personal experience, so.
I mean, I think that's fascinating because on the one hand, I think one could argue that people tend to be pretty hysterical about sex trafficking to the extent that it becomes like a political issue. And on the other hand, when it all comes down to, shutting down a website that facilitates sex trafficking, suddenly there's like no move to do so. So I think, are you seeing like, is that just like, when you talk about your experience with this, is it that hypocrisy?
Oh, it's time and time again. That is the hypocrisy we see. For instance, Diddy gets off. Epstein, there's no files. Like, the people in power do not get held accountable, and you can bet your bottom dollar on that. So yeah, that's exactly what's happening, is a lot of hypocrisy and a lot of winks and nudges at the predators, because when the news comes out and the president says there is no Epstein list, like, what is that? It's a big wink and nudge at all the people who are doing this dirty stuff, to say that, hey, like, we know you're doing it. Like, it's okay. Like, we got your back, like, whatever it is. It's One Nation Under Blackmail, which is, there's a book by, another author from my publisher, Whitney Webb. It's called One Nation Under Blackmail. It's about Jeffrey Epstein, his financial crimes that preceded and then led to his sex trafficking crimes. And it really details exactly what is going on here, and the government and the world is run by blackmail, unfortunately. So yeah, that's exactly what's going on. And I think that the pendulum is shifting. I think it's going to be a long and arduous process. And I mean, it already has been. But the anti-sex trafficking organizations and coalitions that I work with just keep gaining more and more steam and members, and the conferences keep getting bigger. So I do think that this is a movement. I mean, I just don't know if any prosecutors would take this case. I don't know who would, because they don't want to. I think there's just too much at risk because there are too many pedophiles in positions of power, unfortunately. So it kind of is, that side of things, in my opinion, is just sort of not a lost cause, but it's just like nothing is being done in a meaningful way. So I'm happy to devote my energy there as it calls for it. I am doing speaking engagements. I'm actually next week I'm doing the Youth Coalition for World Without Exploitation, which is a nonprofit that is anti-sex trafficking, and they have a youth coalition that speaks to young college age people. So I'm going to DC to be on a panel there, and I really want to do keynote speaking. So I'm doing whatever I need to do, preparing my materials and making my introductions and stuff like that, because I really want to get in front of people and get on college campuses and kind of explain to young people exactly how they're being lied to and what's going on, because the people in power aren't being held accountable, charged to the game, but what we can do is reach the kids, the young people, because if there are no young people on the website, then the website doesn't exist. They're the commodity,
right? Right, exactly.
So I'm just trying to reach them where they're at, because I think that if you tell a young person that they will get their college tuition paid for by a wealthy benefactor if they join this website, they might consider it. But if you tell them that they're going to end up in a prostitution situation where they might get sex trafficked, and that kind of happens a lot, I don't think they would join. I just think that, people are going to make good decisions based on the truth. But the problem is that they haven't been told the truth. So that's kind of my MO.
Yeah, that sort of brings me full circle back to the libertarian argument in favor of prostitution. And is it your position that the libertarian argument breaks down because it is fundamentally founded upon fraud?
No, that wouldn't be my, I mean, it's fundamentally flawed because we do not exist in a vacuum, and it's all in theory. And people try to say like, oh, well, in Germany and in Amsterdam and this and that. It's like, well, the actual truth is that places where prostitution is legal, there is more sexual assault on prostitutes, and there are more criminal cases and more problems. But also, I mean, there's a lot of, and at first, and honestly, upon finishing this book a couple years ago, or I guess it was about like a year or so ago, I was a little bit in favor of the like libertarian argument. I was like, well, you know, it's like kind of hard to argue. But then as like I really started doing my research and like digging in, I realized that that argument, it has a lot of talking points that are easily.
What is the argument? Can you tell me what those talking points are?
Yeah, so they say that it's a victimless crime. That, you know, if two people want to engage in that, then as long as it's regulated, as long as this and that, like, then they should be allowed to. And it goes back to, you know, what I was saying is that like, okay, so maybe in some cases there's just a prostitute who loves having sex for money, and she just like, and it's just great. And that's all well and good. But the vast majority of instances, these people do not want to be in lives of prostitution. They are trafficked. They are put in situations where they can't get out of it, even in like the legal brothels here, like in Nevada. So a lot of people assume that prostitution is legal in Las Vegas. It is not. In Nevada, prostitution is legal in brothels in counties that have less than 250,000 people, residents. So there are brothels outside of town or whatever, but there are none in Las Vegas, and it's not legal here or in the big cities like Reno. But in those brothels, they are completely predatory. They require the girls to stay for an entire week. They don't let them choose their clients. Like it's like you think, if you think it's a nice place to work, it's not. Like talk to the people who have actually worked there, and they will tell you. I've talked to them, and they will tell you that it is not a glamorous place to work. It is not great, and it's not victimless, because the lie is that women can have casual sex and can have sex for money, and it won't damage them at all. And I can tell you from personal experience that that is not true. Women cannot have casual sex, and women's bodies are connected to a man after she has sex with him, because biologically our bodies think we could be pregnant. So we become more attached to that man, and to sever that attachment is disassociation, and it's very damaging to disassociate from your body. It leads to a lot of other problems. But I mean, there's lots of other arguments too, like, oh, well, like, isn't it good for the economy? It's like, okay, well, the supply and demand is already imbalanced because there are already more men who want to pay for sex. And I say men, but obviously, like, you know, there's women or whatever. But there are already more people who want to pay for sex than there are people willing to be paid for sex. Right?
Right.
So if you open up that can of worms, you create this vast influx in a market where there is not enough legal infrastructure to support the demand. So what are you going to get? An even more robust black market, right? And that's exactly what's happening in California with marijuana. They legalized it basically, or like you can have a grow, like, and you can grow an entire warehouse full of marijuana, and it's a misdemeanor. So because the laws or the risks are just like a misdemeanor, like that's nothing. There is this huge black market in California. The black market is even bigger for marijuana than it is in the dispensaries, the legal market, because there's all kinds of illegal dispensaries because there's misdemeanors, nothing. So like, just think about it that way. I mean, I could go on, but it's not a victimless crime. Like, it is like really absolutely terrible. And what ends up, like I said, the people who make the most money are the 18-year-olds and the under 18-year-olds. So what actually ends up happening in places where prostitution is legalized is young underage people get recruited and get trafficked, and they become even more valuable to the traffickers. So like, it doesn't, the libertarian argument seems to make sense, but we don't exist in a vacuum. We exist in an actual real society where it's not so simple.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying because I think you're right that there's something just different about the act of sex, where it has certain demands upon your body and your psychology that you might not anticipate. It's not the same as making a million cups of coffee. Like it's just like fundamentally as a job, it's fundamentally different in a way. Uh, Even though one could make the argument that any job is soul sucking in the sense that you're devoting your body and your time, which are both precious, to the means of some other enterprise that you may not care about. And you don't get to choose who you make a cup of coffee for. So like,
I certainly one could make that argument. But I think, I saw Ashley Judd speak at a conference recently because she is a survivor as well. And she said something that stuck with me, which is mouths and vaginas and anuses are not places of business. So it's your energy, it's your source energy. And if you think that that is for sale, you're wrong. You can't, you're selling a lot more. You're selling your soul. You're selling something deep within you. And I think one thing we as women have to remember is that, for all feminism's good things and whatever, it's like we can give ourselves everything we need, right? We definitely don't need men, unfortunately, for them, right? But they can't give themselves what they want from us, which is sex. I mean, obviously that's reductionist. They want more than just that. But most of them at the core, they want sex. And they can't give that to themselves. But we can give ourselves everything we want from them. Because the sex, I mean, most women want security, right? They want to be loved. They want to be chosen. Like, that's what we want. The sex is kind of like whatever, like for most women, I think like that's kind of secondary. So that's something we have to remember is that men and women are playing a different game by different rules. We want different things and we treat sex differently. So that's just kind of something to remember as well when you're kind of thinking about this.
Wow. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that I need to reflect upon for all of this? Because, I think it's a big topic, especially one that I'm just fascinated that there hasn't been more regulation of what is already a website that has been clearly shown to be connected to sex trafficking. Like that sort of blows my mind and it has its own sort of list of questions. But getting more towards that like psychological human reality, which is that we're in this world where human beings can become commodities for other human beings. And we need to have a say. We need to feel like we have a say in how we ourselves are commodified. And I think the thing that you're really pointing to, and wink, wink, nudge, nudge, is that young women are being advertised to with this false pretext that you will be able to commodify yourself and have agency in that exchange. But ultimately, what ends up happening is you do not have agency at all. Is that like the ultimate sort of takeaway from wink, wink, nudge, nudge?
Yeah. And it's like I said, it's not to say that all people lose their agency or whatever. It's like, I'm just saying most people. And just because there are a few cases where it works out doesn't mean that this website should exist in the shadows, allowing old predatory men to coerce underage girls into sex and lives of sex trafficking. It's just like, it doesn't make any sense. And I mean, I think there are just a couple patterns that I keep seeing over and over again. The first is that this simulation of a relationship is not real, right? And we're existing in a time when like the simulations are becoming more real than the reality of things. Like I think about it in like rave culture. So like the underground used to be like, you had to go find it and it gets shut down by the cops. And it's like this place where all the cool people are coming together for culture and music. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. Now it's like mega raves where you pay hundreds of dollars to go see fancy lights and like, but now that's the reality. That's more real. And that's a simulation of what it was. The reality is more real or the simulation is more real than the reality. So that I keep seeing that, which is where the simulation of truth and the simulation of relationships and the simulation of this is more real because that's what public perception is, than what's actually going on, which is like trafficking and fraud and coercion. So, but the public perception on the internet is that, oh, it's a victimless crime. Like, oh, like it's easy to kind of fall into those traps because that's just kind of what has been told to you and what you see. And it's like, oh, well, the website exists, right? And here they are.
And I'm a girlfriend, not a prostitute, so it's fine.
And I mean, maybe there are, it's not to say that there aren't situations where it works out and like, it is what it is, but the problem is the lies. That are being told that are becoming more real than the reality. So yeah, I guess that's my like final note is just be aware of these simulations because it's not real. Like it's not real life. The internet is not real. And when the internet becomes more real than what's happening in real life, I think we've reached sort of a dangerous place. Like when a website is telling someone that everything they've ever wanted is just on the other side of this screen, that's the devil. Like that's diabolical.
Yeah. It's actually really funny that we're having this conversation right now because I almost got scammed this morning because of that. Like, it's too good to be true. Like the internet makes you feel like everything is within reach because suddenly like there's nothing between you and every possible human being in the world. So anything is possible. And so, yes, there is a person out there who has a perfect mini golden doodle puppy who just can't take care of it anymore and would love for you to come and pick it up. You just need to send them $100 to make sure that you can cover, the dog's vet fees. And like I'm sitting there thinking, I get to rescue a mini doodle puppy.
That's predatory because there's like long wait lists for those dogs.
Yes, exactly. And so you think, oh, I just happened to like luck of the draw. Like this person got themselves a golden doodle puppy but couldn't take care of it, and so now they're looking for a good home. So like all of the story is like everything is too good to be true. And of course then Chris comes along and but here I am so excited because it's the thing that I want. And he's like, babe, it's too good to be true, it's a scam. And I'm like, but can't there just be a person out there who has a mini golden doodle puppy that they can't take care of, that I can take care of for them? Why can't that be true? And then, of course, he's right. And so I think that's just a really interesting takeaway of like, I think you're right that like the internet sort of promises that anything is possible because we are now all interconnected. But at the same time, it facilitates people knowing that there are people out there who want that commodity and who are willing to believe things, even though there are red flags, because of it is the thing that they want so much.
And they're willing to compromise their values and their morals for that. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry about the puppy thing. That sounds really heartbreaking.
I mean, whatever, it's fine.
Well, but it's the same thing with the Prince Charming fantasy, right? It's like, well, that actually doesn't exist. There was one other thing that I found interesting that I heard on like Breaking Points or something, which is that if the service is free to you, then you are not the consumer. You are the product.
Which goes back to that dating website analogy. Like everyone's paying to be on the dating website. It's not like Bumble is the guys pay and the girls don't, right?
Well, you can also use those websites without paying. It's
right. Also,
it kind of like, but yes, I mean, in that sense, they are trying to get you to be a paying member, but they're also using your data. Or for instance, using Google Maps, right? It's like, well, we think Google Maps is free, but they're actually using our data, right? Like they're
totally tracking us.
Yeah, like they're tracking you and all of this. So it's like, just like it puts things in perspective. Like if it's really free to you, then someone's getting paid off of you. Like you are the commodity. So yeah, I just invite people to do that little thought experiment next time you're accepting something for free.
And yeah, and just like, I think something that's really worth thinking about just in general, just in life, is how are we commodified, right? Like every day, to greater and lesser degrees, we human beings commodify ourselves, right? And like, where do we draw the line, maybe, is the question.
I would say at our bodily orifices. That's where the line should be drawn. Yes.
Okay. At the very least, the bodily orifices. Okay, that makes sense. What I appreciate so much is that you're speaking from experience. You're speaking from having lived on the other side and having attempted to normalize this in your own mind, attempting to like have made it right in your own mind. The commodification of orifices ultimately is what it all comes down to. And ultimately you just couldn't even gaslight yourself. Like, it ultimately came down to like a deep, deep realization in yourself from like being embedded in the industry of realizing, no, it can't be done. It just can't be done.
Precisely. Yeah. Well put.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'm really glad, once again, that I didn't end up taking that $2,000 shower back when I was an 18-year-old.
Oh my gosh, no. Yeah, I mean, the OnlyFans thing is another issue. I mean, we can talk about that some other time, but I feel like that is the same coin, but just a different side, because you do have to do the acts, right? But you don't have to be face to face with a lot of different men. Whereas with prostitution, you do have to do the act, but it's not on the internet. So it's like, you know, they're both really predatory and really damaging. And honestly, I don't think it starts with porn. I think the porn industry has completely rotted our society.